Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3822. Today's date is January 16, 2026. It's been almost like afternoon at 0216. Yeah, 0216. Yeah, 1416. All right. All right. Let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right. The question is, what if mirror held your deepest fear? Oh, okay. That's a really good question. All right. First of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question has always been really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a forced me to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality inside of my mind, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge, information, and experience that I've been through, and somehow it kind of like a felt good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's a raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Now regarding about the question says that what if mirror held your deepest fear? Now what exactly does this mean? It means that whenever you kind of like see yourself in the mirror, you might not see yourself. You might gonna see something that you might gonna scared. Okay, what is exactly that what is exactly my scared? Like what exactly is this thing that I am kind of like a scared? I am scared of kind of like a things that like like basically if I'm kind of like a go into the mirror and kind of like a see myself, I see myself that what exactly things that I would be scared, that a future, not a future a kind of like a thing, a future means like that a failure future probably means like that. In this particular what would I see in the future is that, what would I see in the mirror is that a guy who is exactly like me, who actually lost the all the kind of like hopes and dreams and everything. I was not kind of like doing any kind of like assembly stuff that trying to achieve my dreams and things like that. Nothing at all. I was kind of like assembly just a very failure person, and also kind of like doing a kind of like a typical 9 to 5 job and kind of like a stay poor and things like that. Okay, like basically I'm scared of a version of myself that I kind of like assembly accept my failure, and when I accept that failure, then probably it would be kind of like a very wrong. Like imagine myself, okay, yeah, I'm putting all the efforts and everything. Why am I doing this thing? Because I wanted to be success, I wanted to achieve things, I wanted to achieve my goals and things and that and that. But even after I put all those efforts and things, it didn't really work out, and I just kind of like simply just accept that I will never gonna achieve my hopes and dreams and things like that. So what kind of like a choices do I have? I will not gonna end my life, definitely not. But I would kind of like simply chose such a path that everyone does, like do a 9 to 5 job and kind of like simply suffer in silence and things like that. Is it wrong? Like for me, it is wrong. Okay, yeah, because I'm putting so much effort in everything. Like basically, I am kind of like simply like I'm 32. Imagine myself, I'm 32. I'm living with my parents. I'm not really earning any money. My parents are always scold me regarding about what is your life and things and that and that. But after all those kind of like a putting effort and everything, I'm kind of like a working almost like a 10 to 12 hour in front of the screen recording artifact, hoping that it would be kind of like a really good in everything and stuff like that. And after all those efforts, after all those kind of like a criticism, after all those things, I'm kind of like still doing it is because I have something. I am not kind of like a giving up. But after all those things, if I give up, then it would be kind of like a very destruction. It would be kind of like something very wrong and things like that. Might be after that I was kind of like doing a 9 to 5 job, and probably I might kind of like settle my life. But inside of me, I'm always crippled inside of me that I was meant to be do something much more better, but I never really did that thing. I accept my failure. And probably is this thing that I would not gonna kind of like a simply live myself. I would gonna scared and things like that. So that's why I'm kind of like this is kind of like a scary version of myself, that kind of like a failure future that I will gonna see in the mirror. Now, is it kind of like a somebody scared thing? Would you kind of like a see that kind of like a somebody reflection on the mirror? Would you kind of like a feel really scared? I don't know, but I might a little bit. Okay, yeah, I would gonna do everything that future or that reflection will not gonna see and things like that. It, like, if there is a kind of like that kind of like a reflection, will I be scared? Yeah, I will be scared, but I would not gonna kind of like somebody take that kind of like somebody. I would not gonna kind of like take out that mirror in front of me or nothing really at all. I would gonna see that mirror again and again. Because of that, okay, right now at this moment, if this kind of like a reflection is kind of like showing me the future failure and things like that, I would gonna see myself that how do I kind of like a fail, and I would gonna see that ki, what kind of like a simply factor that I kind of like a did that makes me failure and things like that. I would not gonna take out, I would not gonna kind of neglect or take out that mirror and things like that. No, I would gonna see every single day, and I would gonna put even more effort today so that that future, that failure future will not gonna come tomorrow. Things like that. And yeah, one day I might not see that particular reflection of that future failure and things like that in the mirror probably. But this is a hypothetical scenario. Okay, imagine a kind of like a somebody something a kind of like a somebody mirror that kind of like a showcase your scare and things like that. Now what exactly happened after this thing? Well, probably first of all there are a couple of things will gonna happen. Okay, I am like basically why I tell you my story is that I am kind of like a very much strong at the moment. Okay, yeah. And strong means what? Like a strong means kind of like a physically? No. I am kind of like a strong being, kind of like a being mentally and things like that. Okay, yeah. Because just look at me. Look at how do you supposed to look at me? Okay, but understand me. I'm 32, living with my parents. Are you able to accept this thing that till you age of 32, you are kind of like living with your parents and not earning any money and kind of like be pathetic and things like that? Obviously this is kind of like one of the biggest fear. That fear is actually I'm kind of like living it right now. Okay, yeah. And after all those things, I'm kind of like believing that I would kind of like achieve my dreams and things and that. So that's why I'm kind of like consider myself a little bit strong. But still I would not consider myself a little bit strong because of that the future responsibility that I have to be kind of like something handle, that responsibility is kind of like a far more bigger than that, and that responsibility really required me to kind of like make me even more stronger. So probably at the moment I am consider myself as strong, but tomorrow I will be become even more strong, or I want to become even more stronger and things like that. Now that kind of like a stronger, and that mentality of being stronger kind of like make me to face all my fears and things like that. Okay, because it make me even more stronger and things like that. Because this is what it is, this is what I went through, this is what I kind of like my life taught me in a such a way that kind of like a face your failure, face your kind of like a scared things and that and that. And yeah, it is it. But still I might be a wrong too. Okay, yeah. Because at the moment this might be a scared thing from me. Okay, but the situation might be very different. I don't know, like imagine myself that I would kind of like in front of the tiger, and that tiger is kind of like wanted to eat me. Obviously that tiger is a kind of like a bit more scared from me. Like for me, I would kind of like a bit more scared the tiger, but I would not gonna scared. Yeah, why is that? Because I do have a little bit technique. Okay, if there is a tiger who is kind of like in front of me, so probably what would I do is that I will gonna kind of like take any kind of like assembly material or things that kind of like emit some sort of sound and things like that, and I would gonna use that sound and things like that. Why is that? Because of that most of the animals are kind of like assembly really good at hearing and things like that. And yeah, like us, like me and like humans are kind of like scared, as well as kind of like animals are also really scared too. First of all is that there is no match with the strength of me and strength of the tiger. Obviously tiger is far more strength. Obviously tiger has a far more bigger. Obviously tiger is a kind of like very easy to kill me in every possible way. But still I have kind of like a bigger brains. I understand not only myself, but I also understand the tiger too. Okay, so first of all, I will gonna do is that I will gonna find a something which kind of like emits some sort of sound and things like that. Okay, yeah, and I would gonna kind of like simply utilize that sound or try to create that sound more and more. I would not gonna shout my voice. I probably do this thing, but I would gonna kind of like create more and more noise and things like that. Okay, yeah, but still I cannot able to dodge the tiger. It's kind of like a very difficult for me. I might gonna kind of like a simply die in this particular situation, but I might gonna survive for a little bit longer period of time as compared to not utilizing my brain and things like that. So this might be things. Obviously I will gonna die if the kind of like a tiger in front of me. It would be kind of like a bit more scared, but still I always kind of like a realize myself that when there is a kind of like a danger situation happened, your brain is kind of like a went into the fight and flight mode. Obviously is this thing that one thing that I would gonna kind of like a one choice that I would gonna proceed is that try to flight response, that I would completely unmatch with the tiger. So obviously I have to be run, but also another thing is that I should supposed to be run in such a way that tiger shouldn't supposed to be know and things like that. But if that option is not exist for me, if I cannot able to be run and things like that, so obviously I would gonna fight with that. So I'm gonna fight with the kind of like a little bit technicality regarding about the knowledge information that I have. But still in this fight situation, if I chose the fight, obviously I will gonna die. Okay, yeah. And there is no kind of like only there is, yeah, it will gonna happen whatever. So basically is this thing now, every situation is actually kind of like creates a new scared and things like that. Like let me tell you one thing, at this moment I'm kind of like thinking that my reflection would be a kind of like a failure, future is kind of like a really scared thing. But if I went to the like basically in some sort of scenario, I might gonna scared of something. Like basically I might gonna scared about the responsibility that will gonna that would gonna kind of like a held and things like that. Like basically is this thing, throughout my life I realized that you are not kind of like a scared of something for entire period of lifetime. Definitely not. You are kind of like a bit really evolved. Like basically you are humans, or you are kind of like a bit really evolved with throughout the time and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. There is a one thing that I wanted to scared of. Okay, yeah. And I don't know, but this kind of like somebody scared that I have, it's a kind of like a very, I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing. Okay, yeah. What is exactly that scared? um okay, I would kind of like somebody imagine myself, and it's a very kind of like somebody, sometimes some imagination are kind of like somebody so strong that it kind of like a felt real. Okay, yeah. What exactly is this thing? Space would be kind of like a bit more scary from me. No, I am kind of like a looking at the space is a kind of like a very exploration kind of perspective. But sometime a space, out of space, like out of the earth and things like that, space is kind of like a somewhat something really scared from me. Somewhere at some time I just feel like that it might be very scared thing to go into the space and things like that. Why is that? Is because of the, I think that now everything is kind of like a far away from you. Everything is actually far away from you, and not just kind of like a little bit far away, or kind of like something just like planet level of far away. Okay, yeah, that if you try to kind of like something go there, it's not gonna possible. Every distance is kind of like a far away. Another thing is that you realize that you are so tiny into the space, so tiny. Okay, yeah. Third thing is that sound. Like if you went to the space, you just feel like that absence of sound. And let me tell you one thing, what is actually absence of sound? Do I actually experience this thing in my entire life? No, I haven't been. Okay, because sound is always been there, always available, because I'm kind of like a from earth and things like that, because we have medium air and things like that. But when we went to the space, you realize how much silence is kind of like a killing us and things and that. It might be kind of like even more silence than kind of like a solitary prison and things like that. It's kind of like a, yeah. And I think that these are kind of like a things that I might gonna scared about space. But I don't know, I think that just my imagination. I'm not really sure is it exactly right or wrong. Okay, yeah, because probably is this thing, why do I have this, like when this actually happened, like there is a kind of like some movie that I watch name Zame, what is actually that name or name of the movie? Zatura, something like that. I'm not really sure. Like in this particular movie, there is a two people, like there is a brother sibling who are kind of like playing some sort of game. Okay, yeah. And in this game, okay, and a kind of like a space game, and in the space game they have kind of like a space race and things like that, and they just every have to kind of like a roll the dice and things like that, and every kind of like a something that plane kind of like a went ahead and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now basically in reality their entire house is actually kind of like a somebody teleport towards the space, and they are kind of like simply seeing all the consequences actually happen in the game. They're actually seeing all those real consequences actually happening in the house. Like basically they are kind of like a went closer to the sun, and they are kind of like a fighting with aliens and things and that. When I watch that particular movie, I always feel like that key space is kind of like something so scary. It might have kind of like a not only just a kind of like a gravity and kind of like a bigger planets and stars and things like that, but it also have aliens, and it also have kind of like some not good stuff and things like that. So that's why I'm kind of like a bit really scared. Since then I'm kind of like a bit really scared. And also every movie is kind of like a cater me in a such a way that kind of like a somebody space is kind of like a bit more scared in every possible scenario and things like that, like a gravity and then passenger. Okay, yeah. So it does felt like that ki, yeah, like a basically is this thing that ki space is kind of like a bit more scared and things like that. But still is this thing that ki scary things is kind of like a completely depend upon the situation, person, who you are, what is your surrounding, what is actually your surrounding informations and things and that. Also is this thing that whatever you are kind of like a scared is kind of like a simply something evolved through time. Okay, yeah. Might be kind of like a simply is this thing that key when I was kind of like a child, I was kind of like a bit really scared about the kind of like a something like just a tiger or things like that. But since I kind of like a somebody grown up, I kind of like not really scared about the tiger and things like that. So this is what it is. Okay, yeah, every kind of like a somebody scared is a kind of like a very very different thing according to the time, according to the scenario, according to the person, personality, informations and things and that, with the same person. And every person kind of like have different scared and things like that. Okay, yeah. Now imagine a scenario that key a kind of like a simply mirror kind of like a showcase your kind of like some scared things and that. So what would be gonna happen? Okay, now a couple of people who are not really that much stronger, so they might not gonna kind of like a look the mirror every single day. Why is that? Because obviously they are kind of like a bit really scared every single time, so they might not gonna look the mirror and things like that. But still what I realize that na ki in today's world people are so brave today. Okay, yeah, some people are kind of like a really kind of like a somebody like that ki they don't want to kind of like a face their kind of like a scared part and things like that. But what I realize, what I know, and what is actually my surrounding situation and people around me, I know so many people who are kind of like a facing their kind of like a scared and things like that. And in the future people are kind of like a became so brave too, they might gonna kind of like a somebody face their scared part and things like that. And one of the really important thing that I wanted to mention is this thing. Yes, a kind of like a mirror, kind of like a showcase, they are kind of like a scared thing. But that is really essential that most of people will gonna know what is actually scared part. Because most of people don't really know what is actually they've been scared of. Literally, yeah, what is actually they've been scared of, they don't really know. Okay, they like if you're gonna ask anyone, would you kind of like what is the thing that you're gonna scared? Some people gonna say a spider, some people will gonna say a kind of like a somebody chipkali, some people will gonna say a kind of like a somebody a horror movie things or stuff like that. Okay, but they might not gonna scared of that thing. Why is that? Because these are the some sort of scared thing, they are kind of like a somebody influence of somebody. Like basically if you're gonna say that I'm kind of like a scared of spider and things like that, is not because of they are kind of like a scared of spider. No, they are kind of like a scared of spider is because of that Ronald Weasley was kind of like a scared of spider, so that's why. Now Ronald Weasley is a kind of like a from the movie named Harry Potter, so probably this is kind of like influence them to kind of like a somebody scared of spider and things like that. But actually they are not. But I kind of like see some people are kind of like really been scared of spider is not because of kind of like they've been scared of spider, is because of the kind of like somebody their influence, and as also that influence has kind of like making them to kind of like somebody scared of spider and things like that in the real life. But when the situation came, they might not gonna scared. Example is this thing. Let's just say there is a kind of like a particular person who kind of like say this thing, I'm scared of spider and things like that because of the influence and things and that. Now suddenly that particular person kind of like a trap in the jungle and things like that, and there is a lot of spider and things like that. Would he scared? Obviously not. Why is that? Because he has another challenge which kind of like a far more kind of like a crazier, that he just wanted to survive in this thing. And in this particular situation, a forest are meant to be kind of like a have a lot of spider, and obviously is this thing he have to be kind of like a place those spider and things like that. So at that situation he might not scared that spider at that time. because let me tell you one thing, he has a bigger, more challenge and things like that. So this is what it is. It's not a kind of like a, somebody is this thing that ki, our we are kind of like a bitterly scared, and probably is this thing, if the kind of like a mirror are kind of like a showcase, they are kind of like a somebody the kind of like somebody the fear, then it might be really good that they will gonna know what they actually kind of like scared of what. And that is somewhat something really essential, because of that key most of people don't really know what exactly they've been scared of. And that is kind of like a really good. And as also is this thing, right now in today's world, people are kind of like a so brave, they are kind of like a facing their kind of like some scared things. Obviously if there is thing actually happen, then people will like, obviously is this thing that he ask this question to anyone, would you kind of like a somebody would you kind of like a take a mirror which kind of like a showcase your fear and things like that, would you kind of like a somebody take that mirror or not? People will gonna say no, I will gonna take that mirror. Why is that? Because people wanted to kind of like be brave and things like that, and everyone wants to be. It's not really that some people are definitely don't want to be, or some people kind of like say this thing, yeah, okay, that's it, fuck it, yeah, but whatever it is. But in today's world, this might be a kind of like a thing happen, or maybe some people will not gonna kind of like simply see they're scared and things and that and that. Because let me tell you one thing now, people are very different. You and me, every human are kind of like a very different in every possible scenario. The personality that we showcase in front of the mirror and personality that we have is completely different. Yeah, literally different. Like, let me tell you one thing, is this thing that the girlfriend is kind of like your girlfriend, or your kind of like somebody you are the person that you love and things like that. It kind of like act very differently according in front of you, if you are kind of like having relationship for kind of like a couple of months, like you just started in relationship. But when that particular person kind of like act very differently after a couple of years, or maybe after the marriage and things like that. Why is that? Is because of the time and kind of like relations and things and that and that. So yeah, probably. So this is just my opinion regarding about the kind of like what if the mirror kind of like a showcase the deepest fear and things like that. I think that it would be kind of like really good. People might gonna kind of like be brave, and they would kind of like face the fear and things like that. Or they might just kind of like throw the mirror and things like that, and they might not gonna see the mirror and things like that. Whatever. It just. But there is also another thing is actually happened too. Okay, yeah, mirror is not just meant to be kind of like a somebody. Let's just say, imagine if the mirror is kind of like a showcase the kind of like a somebody the kind of like a somebody that they would kind of like a showcase the biggest fear and things, and that we would kind of like somebody scared. Now some people are kind of like a scared. They might not gonna, they kind of like a throw the mirror and things and that and that. Okay, yeah, but mirror is kind of like a do another thing too. Like basically mirror is kind of like a show our reflection too, like how do I look, how do I think and that and that. Now basically how does that particular thing happen? How do we kind of like assembly see our reflection? Because we cannot like basically mirror are kind of like a really much essential. Like I wanted to see myself, how do I supposed to look, because I cannot able to do that thing by myself. Okay, yeah, a visual representation of that how do I supposed to look is that it's really essential for us, because we are human. We understand that how the mirror reflection works and things and that and that, and we also wanted to kind of like see our face and things like that. So probably is this thing that every day they kind of like wake up and they are kind of like brushing their teeth, they kind of like see themselves a kind of like somebody the scared things and that. They might gonna scared at first, but they are kind of like used to with this thing. Because of that they want to see their face and things like that. So probably is this saying that scared thing will not become scared when they are kind of like see this thing every single time. It will not gonna become scared and things like that. So yeah, probably. Okay, but this is just a kind of like a hypothetical scenario. I don't know what will gonna happen, but this is just my opinion regarding about it. All right, this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.